Imagine the perfect action RPG survival game, a game that lets you customize your build in hundreds of ways with unique weapons and armor along with multiple weapon skills plus dozens of spells that you can further augment and amplify. Combine this with an incredibly deep and rewarding crafting loop and base building system and you'd have quite a game. But now add in vampires. The game that I'm talking about, of course, is called V Rising, and it's now out of early access, currently available on PC, and has just launched on PlayStation 5 on June 11th. Having played the PS5 edition now for over a week, I can say that V Rising feels amazing on console, and when the developers at Stunlock Studios asked me to create a beginner guide video, I jumped at the chance. V Rising is incredibly addicting and fun to play, alone or with friends, and action-oriented gameplay and build systems translate extremely well to console now, especially with the PS5 DualSense controller. Never been a better time to check this game out. Premium editions of V Rising are also available, including the Legacy of Castlevania edition, and you can get started now by clicking on my link in the description or pinned comment below. But now let's jump into everything you need to know to get off to a great start in building your vampire dynasty, and thanks again to Stunlock Studios for sponsoring this video. First beginner tip is one of the most important on our list, and it has to do with understanding how blood works in V Rising. Now, being a vampire-themed survival game, you would expect that sucking the life out of your enemies would play an important part in this game, but V Rising definitely takes this concept to another level with the introduction of specific blood types. In fact, there are 7 total blood types that you can steal from your enemies, and each one gives you different bonuses based on that enemy type. So for example, creature blood increases movement speed and health regeneration, while warrior blood increases physical power and damage reduction. And there's even worker blood you can collect to improve how quickly you can collect resources. Simply press X when an NPC has low health, and you'll be able to feed and take on their blood type as your own to gain those specific bonuses. But on top of blood types, there's also blood rarity, and this is where you really need to pay the most attention. Every NPC in V Rising will display a percentage number next to their name, indicating their blood rarity or quality. The higher this number, the better, because this translates to better passive bonuses for feeding on this blood type. In other words, you'll want to pay extremely close attention to this percentage number, and if that enemy has a higher than usual value, don't kill them, save them to feed off of instead. But now let's talk about avoiding daylight. Now obviously as a vampire, nighttime is going to be your best friend, and it's when you'll be most effective. But if you want to play V Rising to your fullest potential, there will always be things to do during the daytime hours as well, and so you'll have to get used to dodging sunlight. Staying off the roads and moving in between shadows is the first technique you'll need to practice. You can only last a few seconds in full sunlight before you start to burn, and your screen will change color the closer you get to taking damage. But any piece of shade you find along the way will also reset that sun limit, whether it's a brief shadow of a tree or a block of stone or even some sort of structure. Now, even when farming resources during the day, you can still avoid the sun by finding the right angle. Keep in mind that your weapons do have a decent range, and you can even stand in the shadow of the tree or the stone that you're currently farming before you knock it down. So pay careful attention to how you position yourself, and you should have no problems. Also keep in mind that sun and shadows move throughout the day, so some minor adjustments will be needed as you gather resources. Whatever you do, just don't stay in one place. Finally, you might be a bit scared to tackle enemies during full sun, but the same strategies we just talked about can actually help you combat your foes even during the daylight hours. For example, try using ranged attacks like the bow or casting spells to damage enemies from the safety of the shadows and make enemies come to you. Basically, you should only come out of the shadows when your enemy health is low enough that you know you can get a quick kill. But speaking of resources, the next tip is to make sure to review your weapon proficiencies before you start collecting. Now that's because while every weapon can technically be used both for dealing damage to enemies and for gathering resources, some weapons are better suited for that task than others. For example, swords are better at cutting grass, while axes are better for chopping trees, maces are better for minerals and rocks, and spears are actually better for fighting against creatures. You'll see all of these specific bonuses when looking at the weapon. Now, there are even some specific weapons like the miner's mace, which double the bonus effect to farming rocks and minerals, so keep a lookout for these special items as well, and use these on your secondary quick slots to farm those resources even faster. So very quickly, you should start setting up your base of operations by building your castle heart and a few crafting stations in a nearby location. The only problem, and what tends to slow you down early on, is that it's pretty difficult to build in full sunlight. In V Rising, you're not able to build walls and a roof over your head for quite some time, and you won't have many trees to protect you because you need to clear the area and farm the wood anyway. So the best early castle build tip I can give you is to construct a mist brazier as soon as possible and right in the middle of your base. Now this structure takes just a bit of stone to build, and it consumes one of the most abundant resources in the game, that being bone, to create a cloud of mist and smoke to completely block out the sun and let you build and craft even in the middle of the day without interruption. Just remember to take the bones out once nighttime hits if you want to save that resource for later. Alright, let's talk fast travel next, which can be a bit of a challenge in V Rising if you want it to be, but here's what I mean. So if you're playing just a normal game by default, there are things that you're going to be picking up in your inventory that will actually restrict you from fast travel. This includes many basic resources like cloth, whetstones, different types of ore, gems, books, and so on. The list is actually pretty large. So if you plan on fast traveling, you can either make sure to stash these items in storage first, or you can actually alter your game's server settings to allow you to fast travel while carrying anything you want. Now you can actually change these settings at any time from the load game menu. If you're playing a private game, just click on the edit settings and then turn off teleport bound items. This will vastly simplify the game for you, allowing you to teleport with anything in your inventory that you want without those restrictions that I mentioned. So I definitely recommend you take advantage of this setting, especially if you're new to V Rising. But otherwise, if you want to just increase your running speed when you're not fast traveling, your early vampire power of wolf form is quite handy for this, giving you about 60% bonus movement speed as long as you don't take damage. You can obviously combine this with that creature blood that we talked about earlier for even more of a speed boost. But as soon as you advance just to the north of the starting area where there are some farms located, you'll be able to find horses, which you can then mount. And these also have a lot of speed to them, and you can even use your weapon against enemies while mounted, which is a nice bonus feature. But let's talk combat next, and something you definitely need to understand as a beginner, and that's how to heal your character. Now there are several ways to heal, which you can unlock later on through skills and spells. But at the start of the game, your main two forms of healing will be your vampire ability called Blood Mend, and a specific item called Vermin Salve. The Vermin Salve is relatively easy to craft, requiring only rats, plant fibers, and bone. And even better, you can slot this into your quick slot inventory to use whenever you need. Now the other option you'll have early on, I already mentioned, called Blood Mend. This is one of your vampire abilities. To use this, you'll need to sacrifice some of your current blood pool, so you can't heal infinitely. Keep that in mind. Also, if you have a high quality blood currently, you'll need to weigh the pros and cons of losing that blood to heal or keeping it and living dangerously with less health overall. You also start slowly recovering health over time, just passively, and some blood types like creature blood also increase your passive health regeneration. Now the other key factor to know about healing is that your healing is capped while in combat. This is noted by the black bar just beyond your health bar, which basically means you can't heal past this percentage while fighting. So healing in combat is definitely less useful and also more risky, especially when using Blood Mend, which forces you to be stationary. But you might be wondering what happens when your blood pool runs out from, say, using it to heal up constantly using that Blood Mend ability. Well, this is also incredibly dangerous in V Rising. First, you will lose any special blood type passives if you use up all of that blood, and then your blood type becomes frail. Basically, this has no bonuses whatsoever. When you die, by the way, your blood type also becomes frail. Same thing here, you get no bonus passives. But the even bigger problem with being frail and running out of that blood pool is that your character then starts taking damage, meaning you need to find another target to siphon the blood out of as quickly as possible. This is definitely an emergency, so any type of blood you come across is completely fine, even if it's not the best quality. Basically, you just need something to stop the bleeding, as it were, and stabilize yourself, and then you can search for another more rare blood type again for those better passives. Now there's a lot to learn in terms of combat in V Rising because you have both weapon types with their own weapon abilities and of course spells, vampire skills, eventually ultimates, and so on. But what really saved me early on was two spell types in particular, which I think are worth mentioning. The first is Ice Comet from the Frost Magic skill line. This is a movable AoE effect that has quite good damage, but is also good for slowing down enemies. For example, you can leave this AoE on the ground behind you as you run away, and it will slow down any enemies that try to chase you. But what's even better, I have found, for gaining those enemies' attention, is any spell from the Unholy Magic skill line, such as Corrupted Souls, which summons a skeletal minion. Now these are going to be extremely helpful early on because most enemies will actually stop targeting you and change over to targeting your skeletal minions instead, letting you reposition yourself for a better angle of attack, or even give you time to heal up a bit. So again, slowing down your enemies and causing them some form of distraction, extremely helpful early on. Now, other than combat, something you'll need to do as soon as you start making progress is move your base of operations further up into the map. You definitely don't want to keep walking back to the beginner zone as you begin to progress further in this game, because it's just going to take you so much longer, even if you have a horse to make it faster. Now, luckily, there is an easy option for moving your entire base, which you can then reconstruct at a new location. Simply start clearing a new area where you would like to move your base, and then build the castle relocation heart structure, and then this will basically walk you through those steps in moving your base to its newest location. But another way to save time with your base is to learn how to quickly access your base structures and inventories. Now, luckily for this, the developers put in two very handy options for quick access. First, Quick Send will send all of the appropriate items to your crafting station from your inventory. For example, all of the rugged hide for the tannery. Then you can simply use the Take All command on the tannery to take all of your refined bits like leather and place those into your inventory in one click. Now, these two buttons work pretty much anywhere else, including the sawmill for sending wood from your inventory and receiving planks back, the grinder for sending stone and receiving bricks, and so on. You can even use these same two buttons on your storage containers, like sending all of the appropriate items to the small material storage or all of your gems to gem storage. So basically, once you master these two buttons, you'll very quickly get in and out of those inventories and save a lot of time. But another time-saving tip that's going to come in handy very early on is how to process your resources even faster. For example, when you really start building up your castle floors and walls, you'll need tons of stone bricks. But if you only have one grinder to make those bricks, it's going to take you several minutes to process all the bricks that you need. And that's where it can be a huge time saver to build 2, 3, or even more duplicates of the same structure. In this case, I have 2 grinders built up already. Just split your stone stack, place half into each refiner, and you've already saved half the time you would have spent otherwise in building up your castle. But hopefully this quick beginner's guide helps you get the best possible start in V Rising. There's so much more you can do in this game, and if you'd like to see a more advanced guide, please let me know down in the comments section below. If you found this at all helpful or informative, make sure to crush that like button as well so YouTube knows to share this video with others. But until then, thanks again to Stunlock Studios for sponsoring this video. Thanks to all of you for watching it, and I will see you around in the next video.